Coming up on New Day at Arirang, EU leaders on Thursday have formally accepted Ukraine's candidate status, paving the way for EU membership for the war-torn country. However, joining the bloc will likely take years, with European standards reforms still needed. South Korea's currency weakens to 1,301 against the US dollar for the first time since the 2009 financial crisis, almost 13 years ago. A World Health Organization emergency committee held talks Thursday to decide whether the monkeypox outbreak should be considered a public health emergency of international concern.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Friday, June 24th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Woo Soo-young.
And I'm Lee Seung-jae. Thanks for tuning in this morning, because over the next hour, we'll be giving you a look at some of the biggest headlines of the day and experts' insights on key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. Now, a top story at this hour, Ukraine and Moldova have been granted candidate status for membership into the European Union.
The latest decision is a symbolic victory for Ukraine amid its ongoing war with Russia. Kim Yo-sun has our top story.
European leaders have agreed to grant EU candidate status to Ukraine, a symbolic win for the country amid its war with Russia. In what it described as a, quote, historic decision, the 27-member bloc also granted candidate status to neighboring Moldova, while Georgia was told it would get the same once it has fulfilled more conditions.
Let me stress that I'm deeply convinced that our decision that we have taken today strengthens us all. It strengthens Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia in the face of Russian aggression, and it strengthens the European Union.
It could take Ukraine more than a decade from now to fully join the EU, but the latest decision is a symbolic step that signals the bloc's intention to reach deep into the former Soviet Union. Russia's invasion prompted Ukraine to apply for the status, and the EU was unusually swift in approving it. Nevertheless, the EU leaders did stress that there will be much homework to do going forward. The latest move was endorsed by the Vatican, which expressed regret over the slow progress in reaching peace in the region. Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin also addressed the global food crisis resulting from the Ukraine war, urging that grain exports not be used as a political weapon. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
BRICS member nations have pledged their support for the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula at their 14th summit held in Beijing on Thursday. China's CCTV reported that the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa issued the Beijing Declaration, which underlined peaceful and diplomatic talks to resolve the issue. The bloc also supported talks between Russia and Ukraine and voiced concerns over the humanitarian situation in and around Ukraine. But there was no comment on sanctions slapped on Russia by the US and Europe for its invasion of Ukraine, despite reports that Brazil, India and South Africa disagreed with China and Russia, who opposed the sanctions. South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin and his UAE counterpart Abdullah bin Zayed Al have vowed to activate high-level interactions between the two countries, such as through special strategic dialogue. During a phone call on Thursday, both also shared their commitment to cooperating on future and new growth fields like climate change and space. The UAE Foreign Minister congratulated Park on his appointment as Seoul's Foreign Minister, while the two diplomats said that they will stay in close touch in order to boost coordination in various areas.
Now, the won closed at above 1,301 against the greenback, a sign of the dollar's increasing strength as the Fed raises interest rates amid the risk of a recession. Now, in response, Seoul's finance chief vowed to take measures if volatility continues. Shin Se-byuk has more.
On Thursday, for the first time in 13 years, the rate for the South Korean won against the US dollar surpassed 1,300. The won closed at 1301.81 per dollar, up 4.5 won from the day before. At one point during the day, it almost reached 1303. The last time it broke 1300 was in mid-2009 during the global financial crisis. The Korean won's rapid depreciation comes amid monetary tightening in the U.S. to fight inflation, measures that could tip the global economy into recession. While some fear that the $1 exchange rate could keep rising even to 1,400 if there's another giant step in rates at the Fed next month, an expert said this is unlikely.
Rather than actually trying to raise interest rates, the Fed is giving the market a kind of signal, a strong signal that they are willing to take the risk of putting pressure on consumption. In fact, it's the US that would have to cope with the fallout of another giant step.
To address this volatility in the currency, South Korea's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said Thursday that the BOK will take steps to stabilize the market if needed. While Chu didn't specify what measures the government would take, the expert said there are two ways it could go. The first is to increase government spending, and the second is to raise rates.
We expect the government to increase spending by expanding public sector businesses or making use of its sovereign wealth funds. Also, it's going to follow the US by raising interest rates.
Meanwhile, South Korea's benchmark stock index, the Kospi, fell Thursday to its lowest level since November 2, 2020, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq to its lowest since July the same year. 신새벽 Arirang News.
Also, the nation's producer prices have been rising since the beginning of the year. The index is now at an all-time high, all the more concerning as it will directly impact consumers. Shin Ha-young helps us look beyond the digits.
People here in South Korea are feeling the high inflation, especially at the grocery store.
As a family of 5, around $150 was enough to buy a week's worth of groceries. But prices have been rising so much these days that even $230 is not enough.
Consumer prices have been rising so much, especially meat, because of rising producer prices. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that in May, producer prices jumped 9.7%. Month-on-month, the producer price index in May was up 0.5% from April to 119.24, an all-time high. The figure's been rising every month so far this year. The surge was driven by livestock products, up by almost 7%. The price of pork rose almost 22% and eggs were up 5%. As an extension of the oil price surge, petroleum products went up by almost 6%. A rise in producer prices will generally mean that higher prices are ahead for consumers.
With producer prices increasing, consumer prices can also rise. Prices are increasing for necessities, including imported food products and livestock products. This will likely lead to unstable inflation, which has also been driven by the weakening Korean currency.
The same day, the Bank of Korea emphasized the need to keep prices in check. Senior Deputy Governor Lee Seung-hun said the BOK should focus on monetary policy to prevent a rise in inflation expectations, which would make the problem worse. Experts say the continued rise in prices and the Bank of Korea's determination to stop it means the BOK will likely raise rates again next month by another so-called big step of 50 basis points. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The nation's finance chief announced reforms to the labor market and regulations on business are on the way. Chu Kyung-ho pointed out possible changes to working hours and measures to encourage older employees to stay on the job longer. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
South Korea's finance minister says that labor market reforms cannot wait any longer. Speaking at the second emergency meeting for economy-related matters, Chu Kyung-ho said on Thursday that the current labor codes were set when South Korean industries were heavily manufacturing-based, so they no longer fit the current industry climate, which has become highly developed and diversified. The fourth industrial revolution and a rapidly aging society call for immediate changes.
To resolve the inefficiency, polarization and inequality in the labor market and to preemptively react to industrial shifts and labor changes, labor reform is a task we cannot put off any longer.
As part of Step 1, there will be changes to working hours and wages.
We will keep the framework of a 52-hour work week, but change its operations and implementation so that it fits the current reality.
The Minister of Employment and Labor also said that wages will change to adapt to Korea's super-aging society. The reform will help seniors stay in the workforce longer while expanding opportunities for the younger generations. Another step that the government intends to take is tweaking industrial regulations.
The new government will focus much of its energy on reforming regulations so that the economy is led by the private sector, corporations, and the markets.
He also said that the government will move away from the fixed idea that regulation reforms and policy decisions are only up to the government, leaving the decision process to those who know best, outside talent and experts. They'll be in charge of the Regulation Reform Task Force and will decide what changes are most vital for companies to work at their best. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
It is time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into key issues in the spotlight right now. With the Pyeongchang International Peace Film Festival kicking off on Thursday and the Korean action comedy movie The Roundup surpassing 10 million box office tickets sold, it's a great time for movie lovers here in the country.
And to get an expert's take on the film festival as well as the success of The Roundup, we connect with Tae-sub, professor and filmmaker at the Seoul Institute of Arts. Good morning to you, Professor. And
good morning.
Very good morning to you. And well, first off, can you tell us a bit about the Pyeongchang International Peace Film Festival and some of the notable entries in this year's lineup?
Sure. The Pyeongchang International Peace Film Festival is in its 4th year, and yesterday was the opening ceremony, and it will go on for 6 days, ending on June 28th. And this year they have a total of 88 films from 28 countries. That's 42 feature films and 46 short films. And the festival motto this year is "With Cinema." So it's emphasizing the fact that for the last 3 years, they had to deal with the COVID situation. And so basically, they had limited screenings and it was mostly online. But I think what's interesting about this festival is that it started in 2019 with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And basically, it's a very special Olympics because it happens in the Gangwon province. And it's a very touristy spot, so there's a lot of outside screenings. And one of the films that I want to kind of talk about is there's the opening film which played yesterday, which is called Olga, by a French director named Elie Grappé. And it's about a Ukrainian sort of Olympic gymnast hopeful who's up for a competition. Just in 2013, she's 15 years old, and her mother is a journalist. And basically what happens is the Euromaiden sort of event that happens, where Ukraine was basically demonstrating against its dictatorship at the time. And there are many other sections in here. I would recommend Spectrum K, Pyongyang Cinema. And in Spectrum, there's a section called Navalny, which is actually the international section, and it focuses on the former Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, and it's a documentary about basically how he was poisoned, and he's currently in jail right now. But it's a very special film festival, and there's a lot of outside screenings, and this year one of the sections that I would like to recommend is a director named Yoon Sung-ho, who's an indie filmmaker who's made a lot of movies, and basically there's a retrospective about his work.
Really incredible, some of these films that are at the festival, but let's go into other movies. The Roundup has certainly been garnering a lot of attention with, of course, Ma Dong-seok, a.k.a. Don Lee. As expected, I mean, the movie was a huge success. I'm sure you've watched the movie yourself. Do you think maybe the lifting of the COVID-19 restriction led to millions of people watching, or was this movie just really well-made movie?
I think to answer your question, all of the above. Basically, I think audiences, it's a really healthy sign that movie theaters are coming back. Many people predicted that the era of the 10 million box office at the in South Korean cinema would be over. But luckily, I think people were, coming back because the COVID restrictions have been lifted. And I personally think, I actually, throughout the whole COVID situation, the movie theaters were open at 50% capacity. But one of the reasons I think most people are coming back is because, you could actually have popcorn and, drinks during the movie, which was prohibited during the COVID era. But again, the movie Roundup is a sort of the sequel to Outlaws, which happened, a couple of years ago. And the movie is just a fantastic cop chasing the bad guy. And one of I think the special things about this movie is that it starts in Vietnam. So it's following this kind of Korean killer, serial killer type person who it's based on kind of a real event that happened, unfortunately, in the Philippines, where a lot of Korean tourists were kidnapped. So it's a combination of just terrific action. It's very comical, and a lot of the same cast is coming back. So I think one of the things I really like about it is the fact that, audiences, when they're coming back, they want to see something familiar. There's another movie called Witch, The Witch 2, which is a sequel, and that's doing really well at the cinema as well.
Well, of course, and as you said, the caramel popcorn and the buttery squid, very quintessentially Korean movie-going experience that's vital to cinemas coming back. And well, what's interesting is that despite Koreans and their love for movies, the Roundup was just the 20th domestic film to surpass 10 million viewers. So what's the significance of this 10 million milestone, and why is it so difficult to reach that mark?
Well, we're only a country with a population of around approximately 50 million. So to sell 10 million tickets, it's doesn't really happen anywhere else in the world, except for Hollywood. But I think to have basically 20% of the population go see one movie is really an event. That's why it's so special. But I think this time having a 10 million over 10 million, right now it's at 11 million, 11.7 million at the box office, is because for a while the cinema, nobody was going to see movies because of the COVID restrictions. So this particular, landmark is very special because it's a healthy sign that people are going to come back to cinema, sit there, watch a movie together with a lot of people instead of just watching it on Netflix.
Speaking of Netflix, let's talk about a show that was certainly very popular, Squid Game, right? Its director Hwang Dong-hyuk announcing that the popular South Korean drama is going to return for season 2. I mean, do you think the second season will be as successful as the first one?
Well, I hope so. The first one was just something that came out of left field. Nobody really expected this show, Squid Game, to be this popular. But I think Hwang Dong-hyuk said it really well. He said it took 12 years for him to make this series, but it took 12 days to become the #1 hit. In 94 countries. It's been translated to so many different languages. And Netflix has been around for a while, but, this South Korean content is now #1 in the world. And I think what's really special about it is that for a budget of about $21.7 million, they were able to make 9 episodes of very high quality content. And if you look at a show like Bridgerton or The Crown, the budget for each episode is around, well over 10 million, 15 going towards 20. So I think this time around, I'm really looking forward to everybody getting paid better and having higher production values. But I think for what the first movie did, I think it's going to be kind of a tough challenge to overcome because, once you have something so big, can you repeat it is the big thing. But I think right now, the Squid Game ending, I don't want to give spoilers away, but it ended with sort of maybe what's going to happen next. So a lot of the same actors are coming back. Lee Byung-hun's coming back. Lee Jung-jae's coming back. So this Squid Game, which is basically basically a story about society. It's a social commentary about the classes. I think it's a very universal theme thing, and everybody seems to be really excited about it. In fact, the fact that Netflix's stocks went up the day they basically released the statement saying that the Squid Game 2 will be going into production.
Well, thanks very much for your insights today, Professor. We hope we can connect with you again.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And that wraps up the first half of New Day at Arirang.
That's right, but stick around. Coming up in the second half with June 25th marking the 72nd anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. What's being done to remember the war veterans and to promote peace on the Korean Peninsula? Well, we find out during dialogue, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean new Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis, a pledge to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
Protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
넌 볼 수 없고 가질 수 없어 뚝뚝 힘을 쏟아내도 뜨거운 자태 한번 비추지 않고 내게만 가치란 그녀는 유명한 서대별 다 어딨나 In your eye 걔와 함께면 넌 디스토피아 내 발걸음 따라오면 유토피아 나의 I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
And welcome back to the second half of New Day at Arirang. Now, the World Health Organization convened an emergency meeting Thursday to discuss whether to declare the spiraling outbreak of monkeypox as a global health emergency.
This would give the virus the same distinction as COVID-19 and the ongoing global efforts to eradicate polio. The international health body does not expect to announce any decision before Friday local time. To date, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has confirmed over 3,300 cases of monkeypox in 42 countries, where the virus isn't typically found. 80% of those cases were in Europe. With the end of social distancing, the number of foreign nationals in South Korea bounced back in May. According to the Ministry of Justice, this is the first time in 15 months that the figure surpassed 2 million. Those on short-term stays, meaning people that are here for less than 90 days, stood at around 420,000, up 1.8% on month. The group that's on long-term visas increased 1.2% to over 1.5 million. The number of foreigners living in the country had been rising since 2016, but began to dip with the spread of COVID-19 in January 2020.
At a newly built South Korean military prison, high-tech is integrated in ways that will ensure security while protecting human rights. Now, there are sensors to help prevent suicide. AI is used to prevent escapes. It also has a large communal area where inmates can socialize to improve mental health. Pyeongchang has the full story.
For the first time in 37 years, South Korea has built a new military prison. It opened on Thursday in Icheon, Gyeonggi-do province, after 2 years of construction that cost more than $15 million. Unlike the original that was in very poor condition, the new prison has a more pleasant and cleaner environment. Inside, it almost looks like a school dormitory. It even has advanced systems in its solitary confinement cells. Around 50 cells in this newly built military prison are equipped with breathing sensors in the ceiling. They monitor the prisoner's breathing rate to prevent suicide and self-harm. These systems alert prison officers when an inmate starts breathing faster or stops breathing for a certain amount of time. It's also the first correctional facility in the country to have a day room. It's a spacious communal area where inmates can socialize during the daytime and has air purifying plants placed on the walls, aimed at improving mental health. Outside the building, security fences are equipped with AI technology, which sounds an alarm when it detects someone trying to climb over. Access to each building is also closely monitored. You need more than a simple ID card and your fingerprint because a face recognition system identifies anyone coming in and out.
It's important to create a human rights-friendly atmosphere while having a high level of security at the same time. We're able to do both at this new facility.
The new prison with a positive but secure environment is expected to help reduce the rate of reoffending once released. Pyeongchang, Arirang News.
June 25th marks the day that North Korea invaded South Korea 72 years ago, triggering the Korean War. Around 140,000 South Korean soldiers were killed in action and around 450,000 others injured. More than 1.9 million people from 22 countries, including the United States, Britain, Canada and Turkey, came to South Korea's defense, and among them over 37,000 were killed and more than 100,000 wounded, according to government figures. An armistice in 1953 ended the fighting, but no peace treaty has ever been signed, and the two Koreas remain at war and very much divided along the 38th parallel. While war has become an everyday reality for South Koreans, with most young people feeling desensitized to it, it's with sad irony that it's remembered for being a forgotten war around the world. Well, today we connect with someone who has gone out of her way to remember and honor Korean War veterans, visiting countries that participated in the Korean War to thank and interview those who fought. Hannah Kim is the founder of Remember 77, a media expert and activist. Hannah has traveled a total of 132,000 miles across 6 continents in 30 countries between 2017 and 2019, just a span of 2 years. And while she's also the official ambassador of the Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation USA, which is currently also raising funds to add a physical wall of remembrance to the National Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C., from where she joins us. And hello to you, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Soo-young.
And well, first of all, to our viewers, we just want to introduce what really triggered this 132,000-mile journey that you made around the world to seek out Korean War veterans.
Well, when I first came to Washington, D.C. in 2007, I was a grad student, and that's when I first visited the Korean War Veterans Memorial here. It is so beautiful, and quite frankly, I was so embarrassed that as a Korean and American, I did not know that more than 36,000 Americans died for me, our country, my mother country, and that the war still has not ended. And I was just adamant about doing something about it. And I quite didn't know what to do, but I just knew that in Washington, D.C., everybody talked about passing a bill. And I said, well, I want to pass a bill that would make July 27th, the Korean War Armistice Day, a day, a official day in America to remember the Korean War veterans. So I lobbied a Korean War veteran member of Congress who later became my boss, Congressman Charlie Rangel, and officially on July 27, 2009, President Obama signed the bill into law.
And well, when you made that very big first step in this journey, it was a step that stretched on for 132,000 miles. And well, that was 2 years of your life. And I can't imagine it was easy planning for this and actually seeing it through. What were some difficulties that you faced, and what really made it worthwhile to keep you going?
Sure. So after I served the congressman for almost 7 years, I realized I'm not getting young. The veterans are not getting any younger. So this is where I need to go travel and collect their stories before it's too late. A lot of people would think a normal person would have the logistics figured out with the itinerary and where they're going to be sleeping, whom they're going to be meeting and when. I actually just have bought the plane tickets to around the world, and that was pretty much it. So as I was going, I was emailing the next country, the countries after. Hi, my name is Hannah Kim. I am coming to your country because I want to just simply thank you and meet veterans and interview you. Can you meet? And you know what, Soo-young? I call them, I call all the Korean War veterans around the world my grandpas, but I call these strangers who helped me along the way my angels, because people believed in the mission and people wanted to help.
Well, it's incredible, really. There I was thinking that you had this meticulous plan all around the world, flights booked, everything down to the minute, but angels along the way helped you through, and well, that's amazing, really.
I'm thinking where I was going to be sleeping the next country, yes.
Oh, well, it's been 72 years since the Korean War broke out, and unfortunately here in the country, generations have changed and many young people are becoming desensitized to the tragedy that broke out 72 years ago. And well, what would you tell them? What would you say is the reason that it still matters for us, the younger generation?
Yes, well, I was young when I started this journey, but, people don't think it's relevant to them anymore because it happened, 72 years ago. But I'd like to remind them, and this is why it's called Remember 727, maybe less Remember 625, Yu-Gi-Oh in Korean, because 727 is the Armistice Day, the day that, the ceasefire agreement was signed. Still on the Korean Peninsula, we don't have lasting peace. The two countries are still separated. And that means more than millions of families are still divided, and many have yet to see their loved ones cross the border. And it's our responsibility. Our grandfathers fought and shed blood in this war. Our parents' generation, they made Korea to become an international giant. So maybe it's our responsibility to ensure there's some kind of peace and resolution on the peninsula.
And whenever we remember this war, especially on global media abroad, it's always mentioned for being forgotten, and it's really tragic, really. Well, you've been highlighting the importance of the Korean War, though, abroad in America, all around the world. And, well, it's quite obvious why South Koreans and North Koreans should care about it, but why should the world care about it?
Sure, because this Korean War is actually the real world war because of its global impact and scale. Not a lot of people know that Ethiopia participated in this Korean war. Turkey participated, and as far as Colombia, a Latin American country. And when I went to Ethiopia, I know that in Korea right now there are many Ethiopians living in Korea. And when I went to Turkey, they called me like their second, our brothers, Korean brothers and sisters. And even here in America, when I meet an Ethiopian American, they tell me that our ancestors fought in the Korean for your country. And it really just highlights the fact that despite our differences, we are actually united by and bonded by this desire for peace and love and freedom.
And you've been following this global trail of this connection that really ties us together. It's a trail of blood, really, all the sacrifices that were made in order to turn South Korea into the modern day state that it is. And well, following the stories of all these veterans around the world, how did this experience change you?
First of all, I was so humbled. Like I said, here I am just showing up and thinking, I just want to simply say thank you. And I would bow to them like the Korean way. I would get on my knees and bow, and not a single, veteran would not be shedding tears. And, they here I am thinking, just simply trying to thank them, and they thank me for not forgetting them and for thanking them. And so many, I love the song Arirang. It is my favorite song. And guess what? Around the world, Korean War veterans, after 70 years, they remember the hymn, they remember this the tune, and they would sing it. They say, I still remember an ache. And not only, I also learned that all around these countries there are Koreans all over, and they, in their respective countries, in their small communities, they've been reaching out to the local Korean War veterans and really being the ambassadors of peace and hope in their respective countries. So I learned again that, we learned even during COVID that we are separated, but at the same time, we're all really connected. And if what happens in one country really does affect the whole world. So I hope that more people would take interest in helping to promote peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Well, as that traditional folk song still resonates with those war veterans, we South Koreans live and breathe in the sacrifices that they made 72 years ago. And, well, very unfortunately, we are losing more and more of our war heroes to time, really. And we recently lost Colonel William Weber, the US Korean War hero. Now, how can we really show our gratitude and remember them as they should be remembered, especially now that we are losing more and more Korean War veterans?
Yes, Colonel Weber was, my grandfather, my grandpa, and a hero. He was a double amputee who lost an arm and a leg in the Korean War, but he fought till the very last day to make sure that his fallen comrades are remembered by, making sure that this wall of remembrance that would list the names of more than 36,000 who died in the Korean War be erected in the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. And, after I went around the world, I came back and I went to his house and we had lunch. And I said, Colonel Weber, what's happening with the Wall of Remembrance? And he said, because due to the lack of funds, we weren't making any progress. We're not making any progress. And that's when I knew, I said, oh my gosh, I think I know what I'm gonna do. And that's why I went all around all 50 states, almost 100 cities, including the bar territories of Guam, American Samoa, and also visited Korea. Korea has about 30 memorials across the country that pay tribute to veterans all over the world that died in Korea. And so I would like to encourage everyone, do what you can to honor their sacrifices and to remember them, because many of the veterans, they don't expect anything from us but just to be remembered and not forgotten.
Well, I think you gave the project to build the War of Remembrance the push that it really needed, and very quickly too. I mean, it's going to be completed quite soon, isn't it?
Correct. This coming July 27th is the dedication ceremony. We are so excited. I only wish that Colonel Weber would be with us in person, but I know he will be smiling down from above.
And well, previously, as you mentioned, you lobbied people in Congress to pass the Wall of Remembrance Act in 2016. You also created your charity, your foundation, and you helped get July 27th officially designated as National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day in the United States. And of course, you made this global trek to make the voices of our war heroes heard, interviewing more than 400 of those veterans. And well, you've done so many for this cause, but what is your next project?
Well, I don't want to call it a project. I always call it my lifelong mission. Well, technically, a lot of people also think that this is my job. It is not my job. I have a separate job. I work in the government right now as well. But this is something that I'm passionate about. And so I want to encourage everybody, you don't have to, start a foundation. You don't have to pass any bills, but you can do something, meaning if you're in Korea, or if you're in other countries that participated in the Korean War, seek the veterans out and record their stories, because that's what we have. Their memories and their legacy.
Is there anything you would like to say to our viewers now on behalf of these Korean War veterans?
Yes, my lifelong mission and vision is that all around the world on July 27th we will commemorate this very, very special day. And lastly, I want to tell everybody, you do not have to travel 132,000 miles like I did. You don't have to visit other countries. Just find somewhere where you are to honor the Korean War veterans. We have so many Korean war veterans in Korea as well, your 할아버지s. So just tell them, say thank you, simply. Even that would mean so much, especially on June 25th.
And thank you very much, Hannah Kim, for raising awareness about this. That was Hannah Kim, founder of Remember 727 and ambassadress of the Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation USA. Thank you so much for your time today and the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, there's an orchestra comprised fully of members with developmental disabilities that travel to many different countries and touch the hearts of classical music fans around the world. Now they're back here in Seoul for a special series of performances. Lee Si-hoo gets us better acquainted with the Heart Orchestra.
The Heart Orchestra aims to raise awareness about developmental disabilities through music. Founded in 2006 by the nonprofit Heart to Heart Foundation, all of the orchestra's members have developmental disabilities. Their performances have touched many not only in South Korea but around the world. The group of musicians have performed around 1,000 times together, including at New York's Carnegie Hall and Washington, D.C.'s John F. Kennedy Center. And on Tuesday, they showcased a special collaboration at the Kwanglim Arts Center. As the start of what's called a master series, the orchestra invited renowned musicians in South Korea to join them in their dynamic repertoire. Led by conductor An Do-hyun, the orchestra was joined by soloists trumpeter Sung Jae-chang, soprano Hong Hae-ran, and tenor Choi Won-hui.
It took lots of attention, love and passion from many for the orchestra with pure love for music to train and achieve this level. We wanted to be part of such passionate efforts and decided to share our talent and hearts.
The members of the orchestra shared their excitement at being able to touch the audience with their music.
Oh, I'm very excited and happy. After the pandemic, I realized how happy and grateful I am to receive applause and interact with the audience. It is truly an honor to be able to perform.
I am very excited, proud, and joyful.
The orchestra performed a total of 8 pieces, beginning with Mozart's overture from the opera The Magic Flute. The artists also showcased music from Haydn and Beethoven before their spirited final piece, Be Rosette, ended to a standing ovation. There will be 3 more collaborative efforts or the Master Series concerts throughout this year in September, October, and December. Those interested can register to attend for free in advance at the Heart to Heart Foundation's official Korean website. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Now, marvelous glittering and sparkling sculptures are on display at the Seoul Museum of Art, including works by the French contemporary artist Jean-Michel Othenel. Now, he is the very first contemporary artist to have his work permanently in the Louvre. Kim Bo-kyung provides a sneak peek.
Glittering glass and stainless steel. French contemporary artist Jean-Michel Othenel's pearl sculptures have arrived. casting a spell on art lovers with their fascinating sparkles. Known as the first artist to have his contemporary work become a permanent fixture in the Louvre, Jean-Michel Othoniel's exhibition features more than 70 works at the Seoul Museum of Art, its outer park, and part of Deoksugung Palace. This is the largest show by the artist since his retrospective at the Centre Pompidou in Paris in 2011. Among the work's blue pigment bricks that look like a cool river are the centerpiece.
26 meters long and 7 meters wide, this monumental installation work of a shimmering blue river running along the floor provides a unique backdrop for several knots made of mirror glass, creating artist's own poetic universe.
The Blue River consists of around 7,000 bricks made in collaboration with the artisans of Firozabad, the center of India's glass-making industry.
The glass pieces that Othoniel uses are all handmade, blown by mouth. That creates inevitable flaws or cracks. Each closely looked at could appear incomplete, but when seen in the form of bricks, they make a harmonious beauty, hinting that our paint or scars could also be deemed beautiful.
For the roof, it was a rose. For Seoul, Othoniel recreated his work as a plum blossom. Inspired by plum blossoms readily used as patterns on the Deoksugung Palace, he used this as a symbol to represent Korea's spirit of resistance, perseverance, and vitality. The exhibition isn't limited to indoors. On a pond at Deoksugung Palace are 7 sculptures, stainless steel pearls wrapped in gold leaf by hand. Against the green landscape, these lotus flower-shaped artworks make people feel as if they are in a scene from a fairy tale.
It is so nice to see the flower-like exhibit on the pond while taking a stroll. Seeing nature and the exhibit together feels great.
All visitors can enjoy Othoniel's exhibition free of charge, and it will run until August 7th. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. A New York state law that required gun owners to get a license to carry their firearms outside has been struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. The ruling came on Thursday in a 6-3 decision. Conservative judges said the requirement to have a proper cause to obtain the unrestricted concealed carry permits violated the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Speaking from the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden voiced dismay at the ruling.
I think it's a bad decision. I think it's not reasoned accurately, but I'm disappointed.
This marks the biggest expansion of gun rights in over a decade by the Supreme Court and may lead to similar laws being struck down in 8 other states and the District of Columbia. A court in Paris has convicted 8 men over the theft of a Banksy artwork from the Bataclan Concert Hall in January 2019. According to a court spokesperson, 7 French citizens and 1 Italian were handed prison sentences from 6 months to 4 years, but will wear an electronic bracelet instead of serving actual jail time. The artwork was a mural painted on an exit door of one of the sites of the November 2015 Paris attacks. It was eventually recovered from a farm in Italy in June 2020. Called Sad Girl, the piece honors those killed in the attacks. It is the second time a Banksy piece has been stolen, as a painting of a rat carrying a suitcase was taken a decade ago from outside a house in the Australian city of Melbourne. American artistic swimmer and 2-time Olympic champion Anita Alvarez was rescued by her coach after losing consciousness and almost drowning. Alvarez was at the end of her solo routine at the World Aquatic Championships in Budapest on Wednesday when she sank to the bottom of the pool. Her coach, Andrea Fuentes, jumped into the water and lifted Alvarez to the surface, where she received medical attention. A statement from Fuentes later that day said that the athlete has been checked by doctors and is recovering. This is not the first time the coach has rescued Alvarez, who previously lost consciousness at the end of her pairs routine during an Olympic qualification event in Spain last year. Over 15,000 purebred dogs from around the world are taking part in the World Dog Show in Madrid. The multi-day event, which started on Thursday and is set to end on Sunday, makes its return after a 2-year COVID-19 hiatus. Featuring breeds such as Dachshunds, the Peruvian hairless dog, and many more, the dog show counts 250 of the 400 breeds that are recognized by the International Canine Federation. The event sees the canines compete in front of international referees across 70 rings. This is the third time that Spain has hosted the World Dog Show. It was previously the host in 1983 and 1992. The next World Dog Show is set to take place this December in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good morning. The capital was drenched by downpours, receiving 120 millimeters of rain in a single day yesterday. And now heavy rain clouds have moved to certain parts of the country. And if you're there, do expect to see 30 millimeters of rain dropping an hour through the morning. In fact, heavy rain alerts remain in place on Jeju and parts of Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsang-Namdo provinces. And the further south you are, the heavier rain you're going to receive today. Meanwhile, morning temperatures are similar to the same time yesterday, and it's a humid start to the day. Humidity will range from 80 to 95% all day nationwide. So sticky afternoon is in the forecast, with highs going up about a couple of degrees higher in some parts. Daegu will be hot at 33 degrees, Gwangju topping out at 29 degrees this afternoon. The capital region, however, can expect brighter skies in the afternoon. The monsoonal front will stay in the south over the weekend, then make its way up north again early next week. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe. Well, that wraps up our newscast for this hour, but we will be back next week for our Monday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks for joining us this morning, and stick around for more updates throughout the day. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are, and as always, take care.